Now, US President Joe Biden is set to announce new protections for undocumented spouses of American citizens. Under the policy, they'll be shielded from deportation, provided with work permits, and given a pathway to US citizenship. People who arrive in the country illegally and marry an American citizen currently have to return home to complete the process for permanent residency. Let's get more on this from our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett, who's standing by. Hi, Kimberly. Just explain to us how this is actually going to work.
Yeah, well, as you point out, the big difference between this new program and the one that's currently in place is that those that are currently married to an American citizen will no longer have to leave the country in order to try and obtain permanent residency, or what many know around the world as a green card in the United States, in order to get that pathway to ultimately gaining citizenship in the United States. What this means is those that are undocumented but married to a U.S. citizen, and also those that are the children of an undocumented migrant married to a U.S. citizen and who have lived in the United States for more than 10 years as of June 17th, 2024, now have the opportunity to obtain a green card or permanent residency. The other thing is, though, they have to be determined to not be a risk to public safety, and also that they potentially can go through the screening and pass all of the criteria of the Department of Homeland Security. So this is significant because this will affect more than 500,000 people that are currently living in the United States, and another 50,000 people that are children of these undocumented migrants who are living here in the United States. Will allow them to work. And so this is something that the United States government and also the Biden administration says is significant, because it brings out a lot of people that currently have been sort of living in the shadows, so to speak.
Kimberly, thanks very much for that update. And Kimberly's laid the foundation, really, for us to give you a little bit more information about this new policy, because the Biden administration says it's aiming to prevent, as Kimberly said, about 500,000 undocumented spouses who are married to US citizens from being deported. It allows those who've lived in the country for at least 10 years to apply for permanent residence along with their children without needing to leave the country. And on average, spouses who are eligible to apply have been in the US for at least 23 years. Now, the announcement comes ahead of the 12th anniversary of the so-called DACA program that the administration says protected 530,000 migrants from deportation who came to the US as children. Now, those who qualify will have 3 years to apply for permanent residency and will then be eligible for a 3-year work permit. Leon Fresco is an immigration attorney and a former Deputy Assistant Attorney General in charge of immigration at the US Department of Justice, and joins us now live from Washington, D.C. Mr. Fresco, good to have you with us on Al Jazeera. Thanks for your time. Is this a sort of cynical move to garner a particular vote bank, or have the Biden administration wanted to implement this policy but have been distracted, for the want of a better word?
Well, I think it is tied to the election for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's tied to the election in the sense that this is the sort of yin to the yang of the border announcement that was just made a couple of weeks ago, where the border was closed down to asylum seekers who crossed illegally. That faced a lot of criticism on the left. And so then now this was implemented to mollify the criticism on the left. And also the fact is that under the current process that you had discussed earlier, where people have to leave and then come back into the United States, that process currently takes over 3 years to actually finish, from start to finish. And so if this had actually really been a priority for the administration, it would have devoted resources to not having that process take 3 years. But instead, they moved that to the back of the line. So this thing sort of now prioritizing this now is a sea change from what had existed days ago.
Yeah, I mean, the White House, is giving estimated numbers of 500,000 spouses who are married to US citizens, as many as 50,000 young people under the age of 21. It is actually a very small figure in a population of, just over 200 million across the US. But the larger fallout is most probably the debate around the issue of tighter immigration control. I mean, this isn't going to happen quietly, is it?
No, absolutely. There's going to be lawsuits. There's going to be debates about who benefits from this and whether they are cutting the line from other people who are doing it, quote unquote, the right way. The Biden administration hopes that, look, if there really are 500,000 people who will benefit, that means there's 500,000 U.S. citizen voters who will benefit, as long also maybe they have family members who care about this situation, and maybe they also will vote in behalf of Joe Biden now because he did this. So the idea being that perhaps this might actually be on the margin something that benefits those voters, particularly the 500,000 citizens, and perhaps some relatives of theirs that may care that this spouse of this citizen gets to stay.
And yet to counter this, and you might say to, again, counter those that want to see tighter immigration, it was only a few weeks ago when the Biden administration was removing undocumented migrants from the US, even before their asylum claims are even dealt with. So within this rather very complicated Venn diagram, there are contradictions aplenty.
Right. I think the Biden administration would try to square the circle by saying, we're drawing the line, we're closing the border as of right now, or as of 2 weeks ago. And what we're doing is we're now trying to figure out how we best address the situation of the people who are inside the United States, with a priority toward taking people who've been here longer and moving them away from the deportation funnel, and taking the people who've been here shorter and trying to speed up their deportation if a deportation is warranted. But it is very easy for critics to throw potshots and say anything you do that helps anyone who's undocumented creates a magnet effect where people think if I just come and wait long enough, there will eventually be a policy for me too. And so this is the debate that's constantly happening.
I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more about it as we head towards that November vote. But for the moment, Leon Fresco, thanks so much for joining us from Washington, D.C.
Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.